Kickstarter guys at the beginning. These guys are making stuff and shipping it out around the world, and I wanted them to share some of their experiences with you today. So let's take a look at them. Some of you don't know them who've been to our startup events. John Buford is the founder of Makeable, which produces a 3D printer called Makeabox. He's also one of the co-founders of Startups HK, so I've known him for a long time, and I've seen him develop this product from an idea that was like revolutionary, because I've never heard of it, to, no offense, but lots of 3D printers out there now, right? So, but he's able to make it different because it is the most cost-effective 3D printer on the market right now. And he's just gone through a massive shipping of, how many of you sent out this Christmas?
Well, so we're still working our way through, but yeah, we're up to about 500 units that we've shipped out already, and then over the next month or so, we should have another 1,500 going out. And we're actually doing the manufacturing here in Hong Kong, which is the notable part.
You're making the actual printers here?
Yeah.
Okay. Not in China?
Not in China, because China is actually expensive and hard to control.
Interesting.
For that volume, for something like this.
Oh, that's clapping back there. Interesting. That is interesting. Okay, we'll get back to that, but that's very interesting. The next panelist is Julian Lee from Ambi Climate. How many people have heard of Nest? Just got bought by Google for a few $1 billion. All right, so Julian is doing the Asia version of it. Now he's not knocking it off. He's going to have a device, not this small, but looks like this, that controls your air conditioning through your smartphone or your tablet or whatever. So you come home to an air-conditioned room that's not too cold and not too hot. All right, so want to buy some shares for him? You know, see him after the panel. I think it's quite exciting. And he hasn't manufactured yet. He's in prototyping stage right now. He has a team. How many people in your team?
There are actually 10 of us.
10 of you already, okay. Developing this really next generation product, which I think is fantastic. And we'll hear more about the prototyping stage from Julian. And lastly, I have Eric Pong, another long-term friend who has a company called Red Hair. And he did a lot of distribution. Sorry, your site's just not beautiful enough to put up on the picture, so I had to grab a stock photo of somebody packing boxes.
It's one of those businesses that isn't beautiful, but it's a great business.
Exactly, exactly. So I thought it's very important to have Eric here, even though he doesn't have a beautiful website. But he's a very fundamental part of this thing, and he actually has a lot of clients in this room. He does the fulfillment for a lot of Kickstarter campaigns. He's also, now I just learned, he's helping John's Makeabox get out there as well. So I'm going to have, how long have you been doing this for? The site and things like that?
We just started doing professional e-fulfillment for the last few months. I mean,
but you've been doing this, the website, the Red Hair business for a while.
yeah, so our background is that we were doing wholesale and distribution, but we drop ship. I don't know if anyone knows what drop ship is. It's when you're a wholesaler and your customer buys from your customer's retailer, and you ship the goods straight to their customer, so they never have to touch it. So we've been doing that for 6, 7 years, and we're doing it at a high volume. So we got this background.
And mostly technology products like mobile phones and cameras, things like that. So you know like the logistics and restrictions of sending this kind of stuff around the world. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what's going on right now. So John, I'd like you to tell the audience a little bit about, not the idea about stuff, but the manufacturing process. Let's go back and revisit what you said about not manufacturing in China, but doing in Hong Kong. And what kind of infrastructure do we have here that would help a hardware startup access this kind of stuff? Yeah.
Okay. Well, okay. So maybe let me explain my background a little bit. So I started doing toys back in early 2000. So I've been doing consumer products for basically 14 years now. Over that time, I've seen factories. Basically, you had a whole bunch of factories close up and move away from the borders. So it's becoming a lot harder to find factories that are very close to Hong Kong to start with. Less factories are interested in doing small runs and things like that, but there's less mom and pop factories basically. So the ones that are left over tend to be the big ones that if you go up and you want to engage them, they'll say like, sure, but we need 5,000 piece guarantee or something like that. So that's kind of the landscape that we're sitting on right now. On the flip side, we're seeing it become a lot easier for companies to engage their customers much more lighter weight ways. So with crowdfunding and other ways like that, it's possible to do 100 or 500 pieces or something, and it actually makes sense if you're just a 5 or 10 person company, where 20 years ago, 15 years ago, that connection didn't really exist. So where does Hong Kong fit into all this? I wouldn't say that there's a developed industry right now, but what I see is the potential is Hong Kong can be kind of a very good place to figure out how to do that next generation of manufacturing. And I think that the next generation of manufacturing isn't tied to any one big place. It's not going to be a big factory in China. It's going to be microcells of adaptive manufacturing that can actually do 100 or 500 pieces of something basically locally to where you need it. And if you think about it from a crowdfunding standpoint, all of a sudden you don't need to do $50,000 of campaign to make it work out because you're using traditional, more high volume processes. I think we can create more suitable things that could do 500 pieces at the same cost, basically. So that's kind of, over the next several years, I think that's where I think you'll see the industry go for smaller production lots. And I think that could really change the way that products get to market. Just as crowdfunding has changed that space, I think the manufacturing space is ready to go through that same change. And so once you get into that, what's important is it's this whole supply chain, right? So where do you get the stuff, which I still get all of our materials from China or other vendors like that. And then how do you get it back to your customers? And so the logistics side actually becomes a very critical part of the business. And it actually winds up being a very time-consuming part of the business that you don't really expect until you get in the middle of it. And you've got pallets of boxes ready to go to your customers, and you're just like, how do we get this stuff out? So that's kind of where we're at right now.
Interesting. Actually, I probably should start with Julian, actually, and like, because Julian is prototyping right now the Ambi Climate product. And I believe, because we see some interest in Dragon Innovation, a company that people mentioned at the first panel, about prototyping quickly. Talk about a little bit about how are you prototyping this, and are you finding it easier to prototype here in Hong Kong, China? How does it work with the 10-man team?
Sure. Maybe just first a little bit of background about both myself and my co-founders. We actually have some experience of bringing products to market, particularly for my direct experience. In the case of my co-founders, they were building sort of broadcast, small volume broadcast gear in the UK and getting it manufactured here. For myself personally, I used to actually evaluate and invest in factories both in the natural resources, pharmaceuticals, as well as in the electronics space. So I have a fair idea or have some idea, I'd say, of the process overall. And in terms of prototyping, actually a lot of our design has been really focused on making sure we're coming up with a design that can be manufactured. And that's coming back to what Casey was saying. We actually find that being in Hong Kong has a lot of advantages for us. I think both in terms of making sure our design, the components that we use are available. So for example, we choose quite standard components, things that we can easily find available on Taobao in small quantities from a multitude of vendors. We know we can get a good cost competition between the vendors, so we can make sure that we're getting good prices, but also we know that these are widely available and very standard components. Related to that, not just in the sourcing of components and choosing the right parts to use, we actually have, we find that there's very good vendors of quick turnaround prototype shops actually in Hong Kong and in China. So things like getting PCBs made or things like getting enclosures prototyped, that's actually something that we feel that being in Hong Kong has given us a lot of access to a design that would work in a manufacturing setting, as opposed to, because we're also actually drawn together as well. We're all members of the hackerspace from some labs. And so we meet a lot of hobbyists. And overseas, we see hobbyists really struggle to bring really hobbyist-grade electronics to that actually production level.
Interesting. So you're saying you use Taobao to source gizmos for your product?
So we do like for short run component sourcing. So let's say as part of our design, my co-founder Paul, as he designs things, as he selects things, I mean, one of the criteria he uses is how readily available is this? We've seen some components, the specs look absolutely amazing and we'd love to use them, but if they're very hard to find, we don't want to fall into the trap in when we get into production of not being able to get the components.
Eric, so okay, so we like doing the prototype, doing the manufacturing, and the idea is the shipping part. And maybe you probably follow up more on the last panel. But introduce yourself, tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, and then and your background, and then talk about what are the benefits and negatives of shipping out of Hong Kong to a massive audience with technology products.
Sure. So my name is Eric. Our background was our company, which is called Red Hair. It's been around for around 6 or 7 years, and we're a wholesale distributor of consumer electronics, mobiles, tablets, cameras, all the accessories. But we focused on dropship. So what we built over the last 6, 7 years was we built this competency in shipping consumer packaged goods in small individual piece pick, small, one item type packages and shipping them out to end users globally. So we do that from Hong Kong. We don't have to have a warehouse in the US, Canada. We don't need to go to UK, anywhere. What was the second part of the question?
The second part is, what is some of the challenge, like, is there, somebody, like Kevin said it was $2 to ship out of Hong Kong. Like, what are the benefits and the challenges of shipping stuff out of Hong Kong?
So Hong Kong is really disruptive for any kind of hardware startup or anyone who has an e-commerce idea. And the reason is because Hong Kong is one of the most developed logistics ports in the entire world. If you just look at container volume, we're number 3 in the world. We've got first-class air freight here. And there's also another perk that's very nice is Hong Kong under the global postal system is still technically qualified as a developing country. So actually, I think that's been reversed now. But what that meant was that Hong Kong post rates were cheaper than rates in developed countries. And that meant that products like Mugu Labs Shutter can ship from Hong Kong to the US. And we can get that to LA in about 4 days using Hong Kong Post, and it costs something around like $2 US to do that. So you can do that anywhere. It doesn't have to be the US. And so I think that this is a very big advantage for Hong Kong and a very big advantage for both hardware startups or anyone that has any kind of e-commerce or business model where you're shipping goods and they're going direct to end users.
Okay, interesting. You mentioned some things to me before, but what are some of the common mistakes that you see that Kickstarter projects do? Like, I mean, I don't know, you talked to Kevin at the beginning or at the end of his campaign, and you're talking to John now, he's already shipping. So are there things that you can share, like your top 3 picks of things that you need to remember when you're developing this in terms of logistics and shipping?
Yeah, okay, so plan for a couple of things. Plan that you need to pay for shipping. I've seen a lot of Kickstarter people do the campaigns and then they realize, oh, I didn't think shipping cost any money, right? So we usually don't want to get into those conversations because we kind of know that we're going to give a lot of bad news to the people who ran the campaigns. The other thing is consider what the logistics of the product are going to be on the handling, right? Don't make this package that's don't make this package that's the size of a chair in the office, right? It's going to cost a lot to ship that. And if you have packaging on a product, make it shipping friendly. I think one of the things that we really like working with some of our clients is that we said, hey, do a package that's for online and then do a package that's for retail. Because if you can shave off 100 grams, 200 grams off your package when you ship it, you're going to save $1 a package. Multiply that by 10,000 packages, you save yourself $10,000 by using a lighter packaging. So think about what kind of packaging you have, and it's perfectly fine to have 2 versions. One for the shelves, and one that's just for online shipping.
I love Shutter's packaging. Kevin, you have a great packaging. Did you think of that, or because it seems very easy to put a look and also to fall out?
I didn't think of that part where it falls out. Yeah.
But that's a great. It looks like easy to put a stamp on and throw it in the mail. Is that why it's $2?
Yeah, but Kevin, can you show them the retail package too, so they can compare? They can see the difference.
Okay, yeah, that's like a blister pack and just a normal retail product.
Yeah, so one is actually an envelope. It's just a padded envelope that was custom made, and because of that, you can shave off 100 grams off the shipping, and again, multiplied by 1,000, a month, you save a lot of money that way. Plus, it's also easier on handling. When your factory ships you a crate of envelopes, you get a much more in that crate than you get in big thick packaging.
Julian, so for prototyping, let's take a look at who in town do you recommend, like when somebody looks for a prototype maker, like how do you find people that know what you're doing? Because you're developing something completely revolutionary. You can't say, well, it's like a Teletubby or something like that, right? It's much more difficult to put together.
Right. Well, we actually do a lot of our core prototyping in-house, but we actually do get parts of the prototype made at various places. Unfortunately, I don't think we have any go-to people.
There's no one-stop shop.
There's no one-stop shop.
You've got a bunch of guys helping you.
And actually what we do is, so we do a lot of sourcing, just cost comparison, and we do see a lot of it, to a certain extent it is trial and error. We start off by, these guys look potential, let's just give them a small batch just to see how it goes. Because right now we're building 100 prototypes, so that's kind of why it's, we just testing the waters, try it out with 10, see how it goes. Okay, we like what they do, we can build more.
And by doing that, nobody can copy you. You got so many different people that hope they're doing it, right?
Yeah, hopefully our IP is also
safe because of that, right? Also, Batman did that too, right? He used a bunch of different guys to make a suit, so nobody could figure out what Bruce Wayne doing. Batman.
Didn't think of it that way, but yeah.
I thought of it that way. Okay. John, why, I know your answer for this, but why didn't you just put your product on Kickstarter? And why didn't you get people to pay you ahead of time for this thing, and maybe because of that, light a little fire under you to produce it faster?
Well, so Makeable actually, we started out as crowdfunding, basically 3 points: crowdfunding, rapid prototyping, and manufacturing. And the idea would be to connect up the manufacturing to the crowdfunding. And this was close to 3 years ago. So we actually built our own crowdfunding platform, and the Makeybox was the most successful project on it. And at that point, we made the business decision that it didn't make sense for us to continue the crowdfunding side of things, that it would take, in comparison to the amount of money that we put into building up the staff to maintain and build the crowdfunding platform more, it would make more sense to focus on the manufacturing technology side of things. So, but at the same time, if we hadn't gone through that route, we wouldn't know. The concept of an integrated crowdfunding platform that manufactures stuff, it's a solid concept. But without going through actually having a successful campaign and everything on it, you don't get enough data to understand what is it going to take to build up the platform beyond that. So yeah, so we built this crowdfunding platform. We did some test projects on it, and then the Makeybox just happens to be the most successful one. We ended up doing 100,000 US of pre-funding on it. And then at that point, we said, okay, we're going to focus on the Makeybox. And then, like a lot of crowdfunded projects, you wind up taking a bit of a detour with the final development. And then, but we're shipping now in volume, so that's okay.
Julian, how about Ambi? Will you put this on Kickstarter, or are you going to just make it yourself? You have funding other ways.
Well, we've certainly thought about, and we're constantly thinking about whether we want to put it on Kickstarter. It's very attractive for us, I think, both as several people earlier mentioned, publicity-wise, potential fundraising-wise. But a little bit of background is that our Ambi product it interfaces with split unit infrared air conditioners, which are not common in the US, where it's mainly central AC. So that's one thing that we really struggle with is how successful can we be as a product on Kickstarter when we can't attract the core demographic of Kickstarter.
But do you need that kind of funding from there, or are you able to raise money as a startup, as a hardware startup in Hong Kong?
I'd say, well, I think I think the brutal answer is yes, we need the money, but yes, we have to find other ways of doing it. But I think in essence, I'd say that my experiences so far with hardware, basically trying to fundraise as a hardware startup in Hong Kong is, I'd say there's a lot of interest out there amongst investors. I think the main challenge would be they don't really want to take technology risk. So they really want to see that completed product, that proof of concept, that demo of your system before they're really willing to sink money. And I think that's part of, in essence, that's a typical, you can say typical Hong Kong investor across many other industries as well. So that it also speaks more for the lean, very proof of concept, very sort of iterative production model, which in some ways we see for hardware, getting your prototype made, it's like, yeah, well, my co-founder always keeps telling me it's like the compile time in software. The faster you can compile, the faster you can iterate, and the faster you can develop the next version. So that's why we think being in Hong Kong is so powerful, because you can do things so quickly.
Eric, at what point do you think that these gentlemen with their products should start to talk about and think about the fulfillment and the logistics of the whole thing?
So just like that example where people thought that it wouldn't cost anything to ship, you really should think about how much it will cost to ship your product and what the logistics will end up looking like before you actually go out and do your campaigns. Because if you had a product that, let's say you're going to sell it for $20 a unit, and then actually it costs $10 to ship it, well, maybe you might raise your price to 30, right? So you should definitely think about this kind of stuff earlier. And it's not just shipping costs, it's things like, well, getting it down from the factory to us, storage costs, and if you have to do a lot of value add stuff. So, hey, the earlier the better. You should really think about that stuff as early as possible. But in terms of like, from the startup point of view, when should you engage a company such as ourselves? I think that having started up my own businesses, definitely be a bootstrapping entrepreneur. If you can save a dime, you can save a dime. A dime saved is a penny saved is a penny earned, right? So probably the point at which you engage in outsource is where you find yourself having to hire at least a full-time or part-time to do your own shipping and logistics in-house, or where you start sensing that you're actually losing out on a ton of business because instead of spending time thinking about sales, marketing, PR, you start thinking about, oh, when's my product coming in? Where is it coming in? How am I going to ship that stuff? Let me go online, look for envelopes and boxes. How do I ship it to this country? How do I ship it to that country? And if you see yourself doing that too much, that's a signal too. It means you're now turning yourselves into a logistics person and you're not actually running the business and building the product you wanted to do.
Yeah, so I think maybe let me kind of add to that, like why we switched over our shipping to Red Hair, because like we wanted to own the whole chain, and which I still think is a really good way to start. Because if you don't understand the problems, then you don't really understand what a partner needs to provide and things like that. So we actually shipped out somewhere between 100 to 200 of our parcels before we switched over. And the big things were taking time, just documentation. If you don't have automated documentation set up to be able to generate all the different forms and things like that, it takes a long time. Even just 20 parcels might take one person's full day to arrange for all the shipping documentation at the beginning. It doesn't, like you don't expect it until you get in the middle of it. Flexible space and also flexible like people. So a lot of times you're not going to be shipping 10 a day or whatever it is for the next year. You're going to have 100 and then you're going to have 500 and then you're going to have none, right? And so if you're doing it yourself, you have to take on a lease or something like that, enough to be able to house all that stuff, or you have to have the people or the expertise and all that. And so that's where we finally got to the point where we're kind of like, okay, we're running out of space. We've got 3,000 square feet of space, and we freed up about 1,000 square feet of that, pushing our finished inventory into flexible storage space. And it basically works out to be about the same cost as if we took on a lease, but then if we don't need that extra space, we don't have to pay for it later. So that's kind of for us where it hit.
Yeah, I just want to add that when we first went to visit John's office, it was very evident that where there was a lot of stocks, that there were areas of his office that no one had set foot in for the past couple of months because they just couldn't get there. There's just so much stocks everywhere. Yeah. And that's also with the outsource, kind of rapid scalability and deployment. So if you get a huge ass order, you get thousands more than you expected. Where are you going to put that? If you're doing it in-house, okay, well, I got to rent another space, and I got to now pay for 2 years of rent, and I've still got another year on my lease. What am I going to do? Am I going to stop growing? Well, I'm going to tell you the answers. Outsource it. So that if someone says, okay, you need another 1,000 square feet, you need 5,000 square feet, sure, get it in. And also, it's scary if you were to say, I got a huge order, I'm going to get a bigger warehouse. But what if the huge order doesn't follow up with another huge order, and I've got this huge warehouse, and I might not have business for it.
All right, we're going to take some questions from the audience. Anybody have any questions? questions directly for the guys here? Yes, this guy here.
What kind of
Hold on a
product? Thank you. Very interesting, guys. My name is Adrian. Can you sell luxury product, fashion product? Because you talk about IT stuff, but what kind of product can you actually sell?
We love fashion products and luxury products because generally fashion and luxury, they have good margins and they want the top quality. Well, compared to consumer.
So you charge more?
No, we don't charge more. But we've got consumer electronic type companies that go in here with really tiny margins, always in the single digits. So it's hard for them to justify the cost. They'd rather have lower service, slower service, worse service, less accuracy, and save that double digit. But a lot of times on fashion and apparel and luxury products, they need everything perfect because it's a part of the whole brand image, right? So they need that part to be done perfectly. They can't have things shown up with commercial invoices that are handwritten or wrong people's names across it. So they just need that perfection in it. So definitely we do that kind of product.
Any questions? This gentleman right here.
Red here, what is your business model? So how do you charge for your services? Do you establish a contract? Is it per shipment, or how do you go about earning money?
Yeah, that's pretty straightforward. There's three main charges. One is to store your product. Two is the freight that you pay when you actually ship. And three, there's a handling charge for the receiving, picking and packing, basically all of the labor for getting that product out. So straightforward 3 points. There's all these minor charges and that kind of stuff for extra services, but those are the big three.
That's where it adds up. Any questions? This gentleman here.
Right. This thing about dropshipping is that the end user would never know you, the dropshipper. They order through their official website, and then they'll get a product from you, but never know you existed. So what happens if there's some faulty or defective products that you send out? And does that apply to your fulfillment service as well? Say I own a Kickstarter project and I use your fulfillment service. If there's anything wrong with my product, how does it work? How do you deal with it?
That just depends on the clients. Some people want to handle their own RMAs, their returns. Some people want us to do it. So it's very easy. If you can ship something out, you can ship something back to us too.
John, I want to follow up on that question as well. So how much, is there a percentage of defective products that you ship out? And how fast is it for you to refulfill it with a working one?
So far we've had good luck actually. Anytime that you start production on a new product, you really have no idea what the defective rate will be until you get maybe the first 100 or so out in somebody's hands. Even if you QC everything, until you have it in users' hands, you just really don't know what's going to go wrong. In general, we've had a really shockingly low rate of defectives, and so all that we do is we just qualify. Depending on what it is, we'll just qualify it, try to not have to ask for the product back if we can, and just send them out a replacement. In the longer term, it depends, because this is kind of a strange business where it's not super high volume. So it's not going to be like a traditional retail product where so we're kind of having to learn as we go.
Great. Any other questions from the audience? Did your hand go? Okay. All right then, we're going to leave it there and move on to the next panel. Well, thank you very much, guys. A round of applause for our panel here.